What's up everybody, welcome to HeroWatch, the series where I analyze various new hero candidates for the upcoming Overwatch 2. Today we have a very special episode, as not only do we have a ton of evidence hinting towards who and what this new hero is, but it sounds like they may end up being one of the most unique heroes we've ever seen, possibly even pushing the limits of what we thought was possible within Overwatch. And while we don't have an actual name for this character just yet, they're perhaps best described as the Kanezaka Fox Girl. So in today's video, I'll be discussing everything, and I mean everything we know about this upcoming hero, along with a handful of speculation based on their details. This is Master Ian Gamer. Be sure to subscribe and strike that bell icon if you enjoy this video, and consider hitting that join button down below to become a channel member and earn some cool rewards. But now, let's analyze everything we know about the Kanezaka Fox Girl. Before we dive in, I first want to mention that my goal for this video is to make it as complete and comprehensive as possible when it comes to all the information and evidence we have on the Kanezaka Fox Girl. Therefore, I will be reiterating some of the things I've already discussed in previous videos of mine, albeit in a more concise and focused format. However, if you would like to skip around to specific parts of this video, then I've included timestamps in the description for each of the major sections. I've divided up this video based on each main source of evidence we have for the upcoming hero. These four sources are the Kanezaka map itself and its corresponding developer update, the Game Informer article from BlizzCon 2019, the post for Toshiro Yamagami letter published on the official Overwatch website, and a collection of other minor miscellaneous details which are also relevant to this character. In the fifth and final section of this video, I'll then be compiling all the details we've learned about the Fox Girl to piece together a complete idea of who and what exactly she is. So, let's get into it. Starting with the new map and dev update, the Kanezaka Fox Girl first became a character of note following the release of the Kanezaka Deathmatch map onto the Overwatch PTR on December 16, 2020. While the map itself offered a ton of detail for players to explore and investigate, Overwatch game director Jeff Kaplan seemingly gave players a major hint in the corresponding developer update video to help steer us towards which map details are most important.
And the attention to detail on the map is really cool. In fact, it's not just some random setting. There's a lot of contextual storytelling we're doing in this free-for-all map with some Easter eggs and some payoff that's going to come in Overwatch 2. But we're going to learn more not only about our two favorite Shimada brothers, but possibly some other people as well that relate to that whole group. So there's other, like I mentioned, story Easter egg. You should really pay attention to every piece of graffiti, every location in this.
Not only did he flat out state that details on the map would be relevant to the characters and story of Overwatch 2, but also he very specifically told us to pay attention to the graffiti located on this map. Now, when it comes to the Kanezaka map, there's actually only one notable instance of graffiti, which is this quite elaborate piece right here. Upon closer examination, there is a lot of detail in it, so let's break it down. In it are three notable images, being a fox, a sandaled foot, and an eye. The piece overall has a gradient color scheme, with the left side starting out as orange, before transitioning to pink, purple, and finally blue. Based on these colors, you could even describe the artwork as being divided into two temperatures, with the left featuring hot colors and the right featuring cool ones. We can also see what I describe as a single flame sticking out on each side of the artwork that's painted in a contrasting color to their respective sides. Now, beyond these immediately evident details, one other important thing to note is that the entire piece is evidently a highly stylized image of the Japanese word yokai. This was initially theorized based on images like this, where we can see how the graffiti matches up with the Japanese kanji, and later confirmed in the Kanezaka Challenge event, which featured this same graffiti as an in-game spray named yokai. Now, for those of you who don't watch anime, yokai are a class of supernatural ghosts or monsters which appear frequently throughout Japanese folklore and pop culture. There are many different types of yokai, with different types usually possessing different abilities and coming in various forms ranging from that of humans to animals and even inanimate objects. So, looking back at the graffiti itself, the presence of the word yokai calls into question whether the three prominent images in the artwork are intended to in fact be yokai. The first and most obvious of these would be the fox. Perhaps one of the most well-known yokai is the kitsune, which in essence translates to spirit fox. Kitsune yokai are often associated with superior intellect, good luck, and the ability to either possess humans or shapeshift into a human form. On top of this, they are very often portrayed as being mischievous tricksters, and in many stories are seen pestering greedy merchants and overly proud samurai. Aside from the kitsune, the other two possible yokai seen in the graffiti are, unfortunately, much harder to pin down. In my research, I wasn't able to find any yokai who specifically fit the images we see here. The foot could be the Ashiari Yashiki, which was a giant dirty foot that repeatedly crashed through the roof of a samurai's mansion and demanded to be washed. As for the eye, there's a few different eye-based yokai, although the majority of them specifically feature entities with many dozens, if not hundreds of eyes, which doesn't seem to be represented in the graffiti we see on Kanezaka. In fact, one of the only notable yokai I could find who characteristically possesses just a single eye is the Shirime, a humanoid yokai whose defining trait is a single massive eye in place of its anus. So with the foot and eye being inconclusive, the only truly discernible yokai we have here is the kitsune. I do think the rest of the graffiti is still relevant though, and I'll be addressing it again in the final section of this video. But for now, the fox seems to be the primary thing for us to focus on. Continuing our exploration of Kanezaka, we can actually find two more foxes on the map, this time in the form of statues outside the entrance of what appears to be an Inari shrine. In Japan's Shinto religion, Inari is the deity of rice, agriculture, industry, and prosperity, among other things, and is often strongly associated with foxes. Kitsune are said to be Inari's messengers, and thus often stand as statue guardians outside Inari shrines. The fact that the two fox statues on Kanezaka appear almost identical to real-world Inari fox statues strongly indicates that the building we see here is in fact an Inari shrine. Now, while this appears to be all the notable details from the map itself, the things I covered here will be important to keep in mind as I analyze the other evidence I've collected throughout the rest of this video. So now, let's jump onto our next major source of information for the Kanezaka Fox Girl. Moving on to our second main source, we have what is perhaps the most unique bit of evidence for the Kanezaka Fox Girl. Back in November of 2019, during the same BlizzCon where Overwatch 2 was officially revealed, a journalist from Game Informer published an article discussing a closed-door meeting Jeff Kaplan had with a number of gaming journalists. During this meeting, certain details were revealed about Overwatch 2 that weren't otherwise shown to the general public. Most notably, these journalists were shown 4 silhouettes of what were implied to be upcoming heroes. One of these characters in particular seemed to stand out, and was described in a fair amount of detail. The hero that stood out the most, and I couldn't take my eyes off of, appeared to be a female with short hair. At her side, and standing up to her knees, was a fuzzy little critter with pointy ears and an equally pointy tail. It looked like a fennec fox, but with longer ears and a more aggressive stance. The hero of note wielded a giant 4-sided weapon, which is somewhat similar to the shuriken used by Yuffie in Final Fantasy VII, but much thicker. At first glance, this weapon looks like it's used for melee purposes, but given Overwatch is a science fiction universe, I wouldn't rule out the possibility of it being thrown like a boomerang or attached to some kind of chain, which I didn't see. Regarding the animal, your guess is as good as mine whether it'll be on the battlefield or not. There's a chance it could be summoned in like Bob for an ultimate, or not be used at all like Bastion's bird Ganymede. Given how prominent it was in this artwork, I get the feeling this animal is used in some way. Imagine being able to tell it who to attack or pin down just by aiming at the foe. Again, this is all speculation, but from the silhouette alone, this looks to be one of the wildest heroes for the game yet. Now, while there's no indication in this article that the described hero is Japanese or in any way linked to Kanezaka, the presence of what was described as a fox is a huge indicator that the silhouette and Kanezaka hero are one and the same. If this is the case, then this article gives us the clearest image of what the new hero will look like, and I have to agree that, based on the author's description, she does seem to look an awful lot like Yuffie with a fox companion. So much so that I'm just gonna go ahead and use Yuffie's likeness to represent the Fox Girl going forward, at least until Blizzard provides us with a better visual of what she actually looks like. So in analyzing this character, the big things to take away from it are her large shuriken weapon, and, of course, her fox companion. I largely agree with the article author's thoughts on how the shuriken could be implemented as a weapon, so I won't really focus much more on that right now, but there are a lot of interesting things to take note of when it comes to the fox companion. For one thing, it gives vital insight into what it means for this character to be a fox hero. Unlike Roadhog or Diva, whose animal likenesses are restricted to just their visual designs and themes, this new hero has a literal fox as part of their character. Based on the silhouette, it's hard to say whether this will be an actual animal or maybe just some kind of robot, but the hero very clearly has some kind of independent fox entity, which seemingly serves as her companion. As for the role of the creature, the inclusion of it in this shown image suggests that it's a notable aspect of who she is as a hero. The comparison to Ganymede and Bob is interesting to consider, as both tend to appear in the promotional imagery of their respective heroes, but only Bob actually exists as part of Ash's kit. The alternative would be for the fox to only appear in the hero's emotes and other cosmetics like Ganymede and Brigitte's cat. But considering how strong the fox theme seems to be for this character based on the other teasers we've gotten, I have to agree with the Game Informer journalist in thinking that it more than likely will be part of her kit. Now, I do have one other theory for not only what this fox companion is, but also how it'll play into the hero's kit and abilities. However, this theory is based largely off of evidence from the other information sources I'm going to cover in this video, so I'll hold off on discussing it until the end in order for it to make more sense. In the meantime, let's now move on to the biggest source of information we have so far for the Kanezaka Fox Girl. The third and by far densest source of information we have for the upcoming Fox Girl hero is the post for Toshiro Yamagami. This detailed letter was posted on the official Play Overwatch website on January 11th, 2021, and was seemingly intended to build hype for the new Kanezaka map, which released to live servers the following day. However, considering the immense amount of detail and world building we get within this letter, in conjunction with everything we already knew about the hero from the map itself and the silhouette from the Game Informer article, it seems inevitable that even more details about the upcoming hero are hidden within this text. I'm not going to read through the entirety of this teaser here, but I will cover the basic premise of it. This post is a letter from Asa Yamagami to her husband, Toshiro Yamagami. Toshiro is a talented weaponsmith who has been taken prisoner by the Hashimoto clan and forced to produce weapons for them. The Hashimoto, as described in this letter, appear to be a Japanese mob or gang who has taken over Kanezaka following the fall of the Shimada clan. Unlike the Shimada, the Hashimoto are very oppressive to the people of Kanezaka, demanding more and more money from them as time goes on and lacking any honor whatsoever. This frustrates Asa, who we learn is a highly skilled swordmaster, as she only wants the best for her family and the people of Kanezaka. She has been tasked with keeping the peace in Kanezaka as tensions continue to rise between the town's citizens and the Hashimoto clan, but it seems that some sort of conflict may be on the horizon. Focusing now on the specific details which apply to the Kanezaka Fox Girl, some of the things Asa states in this letter seem to connect perfectly to the evidence we saw previously. Near the beginning of the letter, Asa writes, "Our daughter appreciated your recent gift, though I pray the blades you forged for the Hashimoto aren't nearly so sharp." This line is the first of a few throughout the letter, which mentions Asa and Toshiro's daughter, although at no point is she ever given an actual name. Going forward, I'll be working under the assumption that this unnamed daughter is in fact the upcoming Fox Girl hero, which is evident based on the details I'm about to cover. The main significance of this line, though, beyond just mentioning the daughter, is that it tells us Toshiro has recently sent her some kind of sharp gift, which, considering his profession as a weaponsmith, is more than likely some kind of bladed tool or weapon. This lines up perfectly with what was described in the Game Informer article when it comes to this character. She was described as wielding a massive shuriken weapon, which we can assume has blades along each of its edges. The gift mentioned in this letter was never referred to as being a sword or even a single blade, but rather just something sharp. Therefore, the father could easily have sent her something as atypical as a colossal shuriken. Later on in the letter, Asa states, "The children of Kanezaka are growing to adulthood with only the brutal, thoughtless Hashimoto to determine what's good or bad. Our daughter among them. It is dangerous in this city now." This may actually end up being the most telling when it comes to the personality of the new hero, as the Hashimoto have evidently had a strong influence on her growing up. Being a ruthless, honorless gang, one can only imagine what sort of oppression that would have on a child. It's also important to note that the daughter has seemingly grown up without a father figure in her life for at least the past 8 years, with her mother, on top of that, having been kept busy trying to keep the peace in Kanezaka. Therefore, it's possible that this daughter would have had a similar childhood to Ash, where her absent parents, or in this case, father, leads to her becoming a bit rebellious. And especially with the omnipresent Hashimoto creating an environment of hostility around her, I'd be surprised if she didn't become at least a little wayward as she grew up. That doesn't mean she runs with the Hashimoto or is herself a member of their clan, but I think it's safe to say that they've had a strong influence on who she is today. This idea is perhaps corroborated by another line from this same letter, which states, "Over the last few months, shipments of Hashimoto contraband have gone missing. Their men have been badly beaten or robbed when returning from their rounds. Perhaps most boldly of all, messages painted in bright, conspicuous colors have started to appear, though they are quickly painted over." If we are to assume that the person attacking the Hashimoto is the daughter, which certainly seems likely based on the fact that we now know she possesses some kind of bladed weapon, it wouldn't really make sense for her to be attacking her own clan. On top of this, the fact that the perpetrator is also responsible for the unwanted graffiti on the map further indicates that they're likely to be some kind of independent ruffian who opposes the local mob. This would make sense for the daughter, as she was raised by her mother and neighbors to hate the Hashimoto, but given her circumstances, ultimately inherited much of their unruliness regardless. Another crucial thing mentioned in this letter is, as you might expect, the significance of foxes. They come up a couple times throughout it, with Asa first reminiscing that, "My mother and hers before her were honored to tend the fox shrine far from the clamor of town. But when it was clear my soul longed for the sword and I excelled at kenjutsu, the Shimada chose me over all others as their sword master." Presumably, the fox shrine she mentions is the Inari shrine we see here on the actual Kanezaka map, since, as I mentioned earlier, we can see 2 fox statues standing guard outside, as is common across Japan. But what sticks out to me most in this line is that Asa evidently comes from a long line of fox shrine maidens. Despite Asa herself becoming a sword master, her mother and grandmother both tended to the shrine, thus suggesting that the women of her bloodline have a close connection to the shrine and possibly even the spirits who reside there. A connection which we can assume will be passed down onto her daughter. Now, we could debate all day whether or not spirits are something which actually exist within the Overwatch universe, and I will be coming back to this idea a bit later. But what's most important here for now is the thematic significance of Asa's family being tied to a shrine and fox spirit. She even mentions later on that she plans to visit the fox spirit at the shrine to pray for strength and wisdom, thus indicating that she sees it as an entity which can help her to fight through her daily struggles. After this, the fox is mentioned one final time at the very end of the letter when Asa states, "The kitsune can change your luck with a flick of even one of her tails. May she flick all 9 of them and send some much needed good fortune our way." As I mentioned earlier, kitsune are fox yokai, so the use of this specific term here further indicates the significance of both foxes and yokai with regards to Kanezaka and the new upcoming hero. Additionally, Asa's specific quote about the kitsune being able to change your luck with a flick of her tail more than likely is alluding to a specific ability or aspect of the new hero's kit, but I'll be discussing that more in depth later. One final detail I'd like to point out from this letter before moving on is the mention that the daughter loves red bean mochi. Red bean mochi is a common type of sweet confectionery in Japan, but the reason this detail is notable here is that red bean mochi in folklore is said to be a favorite food of kitsune. In fact, humans who eat a lot of red bean mochi are said to possibly even be possessed by a kitsune, which could be tied back to what I said earlier about human possession being a common power held by this type of yokai. Once again, this is something I'll be coming back to in the final section of this video when I conclude my analysis of what we can expect from the Kanezaka Fox Girl. Moving now onto the last main category of evidence for the Kanezaka Fox Girl, we have additional miscellaneous tidbits. The first of these is the backpack girl we see on a couple posters across Kanezaka. Now, back in my initial Fox Girl analysis video following the release of Kanezaka onto PTR, I threw out a crackpot theory that she in fact could be the Fox Girl. Seeing as her image is unique to just this map, I proposed that she might be a fashion model by day, foxy ninja by night type character, and this theory theory seemed to be only further supported by her being featured in one of the Kanezaka challenge sprays named Tato Takes Off. This suggested that the girl's name might actually be Tato, which for all we know could also be the name of the Fox Girl. However, after researching the specific theory a bit more, it unfortunately appears to not hold much water. Tato is in fact a type of Japanese paper envelope used for holding money and other small items, and the name of the store this girl is advertising is even called Pug Tato. So unless the girl we see here is supposed to be the store's mascot, it seems more likely that Tato Takes Off is just referencing the specific store and the launch of its new product line. So while at first it seems like an exciting lead, it's more than likely unrelated to the Fox Girl. Also, in the Game Informer article, it clearly stated that she had short hair, and this poster girl has long hair, so yeah, that's another big inconsistency. But on a more optimistic note, the Kanezaka Challenge event did give us another, more notable lead to focus on, which is the yokai spray I mentioned earlier. While this is clearly the graffiti we see on the map itself, its inclusion in this event further emphasizes its significance. And on top of that, it's curious to note that at the moment, the spray is exclusive to Hanzo. If we are to assume that the graffiti and word yokai is relevant to the new Fox Girl hero, then how come it's an unlockable spray for Hanzo? I mean, they of course couldn't give it to the Fox Girl right now, seeing as she's not in game yet, but I'm not convinced that Blizzard would treat what is clearly a teaser for a future hero so dismissively. It's more likely that Hanzo himself will somehow be tied to yokai and the future hero. And of course, we know he technically already is, what with Asa having been the one who taught him and Genji how to use swords, but I believe we're going to see Hanzo play a more personal role with the new hero in present-day Overwatch. Think about it, what else does Hanzo even really have going for him at the moment? He's still mourning his brother and grabbed a slice of cake around Christmas time, but otherwise hasn't really done much that we know of. Genji, by comparison, has done loads of stuff. He joined Overwatch, became conflicted with who he was, and underwent a spiritual journey with Zenyatta. Hanzo, by comparison, is as lame in the lore as he is in game. This new Fox Girl would be a great opportunity to not only add a cool new hero, but also give Hanzo more story and interactions. Perhaps if she's as much of a reckless ruffian as the teasers hint, then Hanzo will see a bit of his younger brother in her and find a connection. Perhaps he could even become her mentor and help her to correct her rebellious tendencies in a way he previously failed to do with Genji. This would essentially be his redemption path as an older brother and help him to complete a significant story arc. While I don't want to sidetrack too much with Hanzo speculation in this video, I will mention that if we take a look at the Sombra conspiracy web, which released all the way back in 2016, we can see a mysterious shadow figure connected to Hanzo and the Shimada clan, but not to Genji. The long-standing theory has been that this person is Hanzo and Genji's father, Sojiro. But if that's the case, then why isn't Genji connected to him directly like Hanzo is? Could this in fact be someone completely different? Someone who's primarily attached to only Hanzo and the Shimada clan? Someone like the Kanezaka Fox Girl? Maybe, maybe not, but it's certainly worth considering. Alrighty, so now that I've covered all the notable evidence pertaining to the Kanezaka Fox Girl, what is the final image we have of her? Well, starting with her visual appearance, it still seems that she'll be a human girl who more or less looks like Yuffie from Final Fantasy VII with a fox companion. Her weapon will be some kind of bulky bladed shuriken, which may function as a melee weapon, ranged boomerang, or possibly even both. However, the fox itself is where we're left with the most questions still in terms of not only appearance, but also utility. For starters, what exactly is it? Asa's letter gives no indication of their daughter owning a pet, and the very traditional aesthetics of Kanezaka alongside this new hero's clear inspiration from Japanese folklore makes me skeptical that it'll be a robot. In fact, given her family history of tending the fox shrine, the word yokai present in the graffiti, and the indication of the daughter possibly even being possessed by a kitsune, it seems that her companion may in actuality be a spirit fox. Now, hear me out. If it is a fox spirit, and the daughter is in fact possessed by it, that introduces some really interesting possibilities for her character. The girl and fox spirit are technically two separate characters who function in unison as a single hero. Think of Venom from Spider-Man, or Johnny Silverhand from Cyberpunk 2077. I don't think Blizzard would want to make this possession malicious or parasitic, so it could be the case where the daughter has willingly invoked the spirit to work within her in order to gain its strength and wisdom. And if we are to assume that the spirit is itself sentient, then that could end up making her some sort of dual character hero where both the daughter and fox spirit each have their own personalities and maybe even voice lines for different interactions. From a story standpoint, it could even make sense for a fox spirit to want to help the daughter rebel against the Hashimoto. If the clan is as dishonorable as Asa suggests, then perhaps even the spirits in the fox shrine are discontent with their presence. Considering that kitsune in folklore are often mischievous tricksters, this would actually go perfectly in hand with the daughter being a rebellious ruffian. Remember how earlier I mentioned that in many stories, kitsune are seen harassing greedy merchants? Perhaps that's exactly what it's doing in Kanezaka when it vandalizes property and ambushes the greedy Hashimoto clan, albeit vicariously through Asa's daughter. This idea of possession also lends itself to several unique ideas for abilities and gameplay mechanics. Perhaps the spirit could leave her body to perform attacks, or even go as far as to possess other players to provide positive effects to allies and negative effects to enemies. I've got a number of specific ideas for abilities like this, but I'll be saving those for a follow-up video where I dive fully into the Fox Girl's possible role and abilities. Now, admittedly, the existence of literal spirits and possession aren't super compatible with what's already been established about the Overwatch sci-fi universe. The idea of spirits seems to push the magic boundary a bit too much, which, in my eyes, is the main caveat to this theory. But then again, no one believed there could be a giant super intelligent hamster prior to the release of Wrecking Ball, and yet Blizzard somehow managed to make him feel right at home. Plus, heroes like Reaper and Sigma have some pretty magical powers that are only loosely explained through science. So, I wouldn't rule out the possibility of Blizzard once again working their own magic to somehow sneak a fox spirit into the game as well, especially if they think it'd make for a really unique and interesting addition to the hero roster. But beyond the Fox Companion and its significance to her character, there's also some notable theories we can make regarding the yokai graffiti on Kanezaka. In the post for Toshiro Yamagami, Asa suspects that there are multiple vigilantes fighting against the Hashimoto clan as opposed to just one person. And while this could actually be a clever meta indication by Blizzard hinting at the duality of the daughter and fox spirit, it could also indicate that there is in fact a group of rebels at work here. And what if this rebel group is called the yokai? When it comes to the Fox Girl, the term yokai doesn't make a whole lot of sense, since the only yokai she's seemingly connected to is the kitsune. But what if yokai is the name for a group of people where each member is associated with a different type of yokai? This rebel faction would be part of the Fox Girl's backstory and could even explain how Hanzo is seemingly connected to the graffiti. While I'm skeptical of Hanzo himself being a member of this underground rebel gang, he could have some association with them, and this may be how he personally ends up meeting the Fox Girl. Now, I don't want to delve too much further into speculation in this video. It's already run on long enough with me just covering all the evidence, and realistically, I could spend hours theorizing different possibilities for the upcoming hero. If there is one thing, though, I'd like to tack on before closing off this video, it's that Blizzard has consistently caught us off guard time and time again with the creativity and uniqueness of the heroes they add to Overwatch. I'm not saying that my theory about fox spirits and possession are for sure what we'll be getting with her, but I'm willing to bet that this new hero will be a lot more interesting than the generic female ninja many people assume her to be. But I guess we'll just have to wait and see. And if Blizzard plays their cards how I think they will, then we likely won't even have to wait too long. If you haven't already, be sure to check out the video I did discussing when we can expect this new hero to release, which I'll have linked in the cards on screen. And while you're at it, be sure to check out my Fox Girl role and ability predictions video, which I plan to release shortly after this one. Based on all the evidence elements I've covered here, I think we can make some reasonable estimates for how she'll play in game. But since this video was already so long, I decided to save all that for a separate follow-up video. Once it's uploaded, I'll be including a link to it down in the description and at the cards on screen. But otherwise, that does it for this super long, super special episode of HeroWatch. Thank you all for watching. Be sure to like, subscribe, hit up that bell icon, and follow me on Twitter if you enjoyed this video and don't want to miss any of my future Overwatch content. Special thanks to my YouTube channel members who help make these videos possible, and if you'd like to join them to earn some cool rewards and support my channel, then just hit that join button down below. Today's comment question: who or what do you think the Kanezaka Fox Girl will end up being? Let me know in the comments down below. Otherwise, this is Master Ian Gamer signing off, and until next time, have a great day.